Hi everyone, welcome to my YouTube channel. I haven't been on in a while. I'm so glad you're here. My name is Dr. Christine Cocciola, and I'm a licensed clinical social worker and have my doctorate in clinical social welfare, where I research specifically coercive control and the experiences of adult and child victims. I really like to focus on every single aspect of coercive control that happens to the adult victim is happening to the children all of the time. We just don't see it and notice it. It is truly an unacknowledged child abuse, and a lot of people call these people narcissistic abusers. They do certainly have the characterological traits of narcissism, but they are abusive, and that's the difference. And I like to call them coercive controllers because what they are doing is exerting coercive and controlling tactics onto their victims, including their children. So I'm glad you're here, and thank you so much. I really wanted to talk today about trauma bonding. I had a mom call today, on a call today, and she was expressing how frustrating it is because her coercive controller, her narcissistic abuser, was overtly physically abusive to her oldest child. And now that oldest child is basically demothering her, is what some of us call it, right? He is trying really hard to not have her as his mother because he's being trained to do so. Let's be really clear, this is like a cult. If you've watched my other YouTubes, you know that this is like a cult. And so really an attempt by the abuser to demother the protective parent. And in that, the child is rejecting his mother, and she can't believe it. Like, she's like, how could he not remember? And I ask all of my protective parents, how do you not remember how indoctrinated you were? How much you wanted to believe that person was a decent human being, how much you tried to accommodate in an attempt to keep equilibrium in the home. It truly is like a cult. It truly is so harmful to children because they grow up watching the protective parent regulate her behaviors. They learn to regulate theirs. And unlike the protective parent, this other person is their parent. It's incongruent to think that a parent could be aggressive and harmful to us. This is why we know in overt child abuse cases where child protective services is involved, children oftentimes go back to their abusive parent. This is what they do. It just feels right. It feels good. And so in that, knowing that our children are indoctrinated, that they want to believe so badly, or they fear rejection if they don't believe. It's a trauma bond. Okay. And so, what do we know about trauma bonding? It usually starts off really good. It starts off as this person loving us. And then in that, it's about control, right? It's about this really significant power over, and it's about intermittent reinforcement. And as time goes on, the intermittent reinforcement gets less and less and less, but we grasp and hold on to whatever we can to retain that good feeling. Again, the dopamine is released in the body. The dopamine helps us feel satisfied, helps us feel positive. And then, of course, oxytocin is this desire to be attached to another person. And I'm simplifying it, but there's chemical reactions in the brain that are making this happen. So, in this, someone loves us. They tell us we're really awesome at hockey. Oh, but you're not so good at soccer. So maybe you shouldn't play soccer anymore, right? So they start to really create a space where a child has no ability to discern what is good and what is bad. They have challenges with that. And they've watched us walk around and try really hard to accommodate this other person, right? Because listen, this is why I have a podcast called Perfect Prey, because victims and survivors tend to be loyal to a fault, tend to be highly forgiving, optimistic, see the glasses half full all of the time, even when it's like literally empty. They also are empathic, right? And they're fixers and givers in relationships. They're the people who really want things to work out and want to keep trying. And if an abuser capitalizes on that and says, well, I thought you wanted us to work out, or I thought you really wanted our family, the trauma bond is intensified. It gets intensified for sure. So this love bombing, this good stuff happens. And then from there, there's certainly a getting hooked time. There's a bait in there that we get hooked on it. And we're waiting and waiting and waiting for that good opportunity, that good experience to occur. There's a building of trust that occurs. And in that building of trust, we can't imagine that someone would be so harmful. We just can't imagine it. And in that, there will begin to be a slow erosion of our autonomy, of our ability to know what we should know, of our ability to see the patterns clearly, right? It's never a victim's fault, but man, it gets murky in there. In that relationship dynamic, it gets murky, and it gets murky for adults. Of course it does for children. Of course it does. So this boy who can't even recall the physical violence, now all he knows in his head is that his mother is bad, is that she doesn't love him, that she's disappointed in him. None of it is true. It's the false narrative he's hearing. So gaslighting becomes part of this, that gaslighting into making someone believe something that's not accurate. That's all these abusers do all day with their children, is they gaslight their children into thinking something that's not true. So children are being betrayed by one parent who's the abuser, because in their heart of hearts, they know like this person only loves them conditionally, but they're also being betrayed by the other parent due to the gaslighting, the false narrative that is occurring. So you see, they're trapped, significantly trapped, and they don't even know they're trapped. That's the problem. It's not like they're on social media learning about narcissistic abuse or coercive control. It's not like they have girlfriends they can run this off of, or boyfriends or friends that they can say, hey, this is happening to me at home. There's no one for them to talk to about this. So that's why we, as protective parents, have to show up differently. We have to be different than how the coercive controller describes us. We can never disparage the coercive controller. We have to stand in a place of personal power. So in that gaslighting, children often resign, as did the adult victim. They just resign and give up. It's just like, I can't fight this anymore. And if I do, by the way, if I fight this abusive parent, there's a chance they're going to reject me. And I'm being told in my head that my protective parent has already rejected me. So how do I reject them? How do I reject this abuser? Because then I'd have no one. Then I'm alone. I'm a totally abandoned. That's not what the protective parent is doing, but that is the narrative. The narrative is the protective parent is crazy, sensitive, doesn't care about them, doesn't really love them, has ruined the family. That's the narration they're hearing. It's all gaslighting. Understanding that this loss of self, the sense of self occurs, and in that the addiction in the brain occurs. This is where that intense desire to try to stay in this relationship, to work really hard at it occurs, because there is all of this trauma going on. That's what's going on with our children. It happened to you. It's happening to your children. By the way, it's not any different than Biderman's coercion chart. In Biderman's coercion chart for prisoners of war, talks about how people are worn down so much they will go from actually disbelieving, like not agreeing that they did anything wrong in a prisoner of war. I didn't do anything wrong, to being so broken down and compromised that they will actually fully on admit that they did something wrong. And in that admitting, will apologize, like authentically, because they are so coerced. It's a cult, it's indoctrination, it's brainwashing, and it's so, so harmful. So why are your children aligned with that abusive parent? Because they're trauma bonded. And they don't want to believe in their heart of hearts that that person can be so horrible. And it's easier to believe you're horrible because you're not going to attack them. And so that's what we do, is we keep showing up in a way that is non-threatening, non-disparaging of the coercive controller, the narcissistic abuser. We keep showing up in a way that is calm. We keep showing up in a way that is with honesty and integrity, and they keep sending arrows our way, and we have armor on, and those arrows fall off. And the more those arrows fall off, the more we're not impacted by their words, the more that we are not affected by it, the more clarity they will have about who you are and the difference between you and that coercive controller, narcissistic abuser. So I promise to try to get on once a week. I promise to do this more. Please listen to my podcast, Perfect Prey. Please subscribe below. I hope you've enjoyed this. Please let me know your thoughts. I'm thinking of all of you. You are doing the hardest work there is. You are. Have a great day.